and welcome to the 350th presentation of Forum for a Better Understanding. Today our topic is one we've never covered ever before in the last 8 years, and we have 3 guests who are going to share with us the importance of the rituals, the prayers, the ceremonies by which we dispatch, by which we send back to God those who have passed on. We have 3 guests, the first one being Rabbi Levy Zirkind, who is an Orthodox rabbi and the spiritual leader of the Chabad of Fresno. In the middle of our group, we have the Iman Seyed Ali Ghazvini, who is the spiritual leader of the Islamic Cultural Center here in Fresno. And directly across from me, my mirror image, is my brother Rob, who is a liturgical and pastoral musician serving in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. Thanks for being here today. Rob, beginning with you and then Imam and Rabbi, in a sentence, could you tell me why this topic of talking about how we ritualize passing would be important for you?
Well, thank you. This passage from the physical life to the eternal life is something which we understand logically, and anyone who's studied our faith, the faith tradition that runs through all of our faith, has a logical understanding. But when someone passes, logic goes out the window. And what we feel is remorse and grief. And I see the purpose of these rituals to kind of bring us back to our center, to bring us back to the place where we know we want to land, but our human tendencies bring us elsewhere.
Thanks, Rob. Imam, for you, why is this a topic you wanted to talk about?
Thank you, Jim, for your invitation. Faiths and also places of worship celebrate and commemorate major events within the human life, like birth, wedding, so on and so forth. And of course, death is one of these major events. And as a spiritual leader in my community, we deal with this all the time. Death also represents the supremacy of God. Regardless of advancement of science and technology, humans could not do anything when it comes to death. It shows that it manifests the power of God, the power that we all should submit to.
Rabbi, why did you want to be here to speak about this topic from your perspective?
The perspective of a Jew is to quote a story that we have one God and 2 worlds. And they're both intertwined. When a person passes on and they meet their Maker, there's a subtotal of everything that they have done in the world, and they're going to face their Maker. And we want to, so to speak, do the best we can physically on this world for their spiritual soul.
Thank you. Rob, from another point, the most important belief, the heart of the Catholic understanding of the rite of dismissal, of dispatch, of saying farewell, what is it? What's the heart of our ritual?
Sure. Well, I think our Imam spoke to it eloquently. There is a continuum of life. There is the physical life, and there is the overarching spiritual life. And when our body passes, that is a definite turning point, but it's not an ending point. Yeah. We have come from God. Through God, we come into existence. And to God, we take our final eternal place. So I would say that the essence of the Christian approach is to see our lives not as segmented, but as unified with different expressions.
Excellent. Imam, from your experience, what would be the heart of the Islamic spirituality about the ritualizing of passing?
I would echo what Bob said. This is actually what the Quran also said. It says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to God, and to God we return. So death is not an end of life. Death is an end of a stage in our life, and we go back to to God. And this is what I always tell the community and others, that people fear death, but once you know that you are returning to God, who is the source of mercy, forgiveness, beauty, love, and care, then actually there should be no fear, because we are going back to Him for our final home. So the heart of this is that we are going to face and meet God, the merciful, the forgiver, and the source of love and beauty.
Thank you. Rabbi, now you can help us out at depth here, a little longer answer. Let's take the Kaddish. Can you unpack that a little bit for us, how Judaism actually verbalizes and ritualizes with concrete prayers this spirituality we've been talking about? Can you unpack the Kaddish a little?
Well, you have to know the history of Kaddish. It has a long history. It's the first thing is it's an affirmation of faith of a Jew. The second thing, it's an affirmation of the family, that they acknowledge acceptance of the unfortunate situation and still praising God, because if you take Kaddish, means God's name will be exalted and uplifted forever and ever. So the origins of Kaddish go back all the way to the verse Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuso Olam Vaed, blessed be the name of the glory of His kingdom forever and ever, which is the first one that's recorded that was said by the sons of Jacob. When Jacob in the end of Genesis blesses his sons and says a final testament and gives them his blessings, it starts off as saying that he gathers them all, and he's asking them, is there God among you? And they all say, blessed be the name of the glory of His kingdom forever and ever. So that's then translated to that was the words of Kaddish, which is mentioned in the Talmud, is Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach L'Olam L'Olam Amai Yisbarich. It's in Aramaic. May the name of the great name of God be blessed forever and ever. That is the part, what you call the crux or the foundation of Kaddish. Kaddish is broken down in many parts of Kaddish. The Kaddish is said many times during the prayer, if you have, and I'll repeat, 10 Jewish men.
That's right.
Okay, not mixed. And the Kaddish that is said during the prayer by the cantor, that's one. There's many Kaddishes. And then there's a Kaddish that is primarily said, one is at the gravesite, as there'll be a resurrection of the dead. And that's one thing said by the family, the grieving family, and that's the sons have the requirement to say Kaddish, and every other relative. So basically, you have to break up. There's 7 relatives who have to mourn, which is a father and a mother, God forbid, who have to bury a child, a brother and a sister, a son and a daughter, and a wife and her husband. Those are 7 main relatives that have to mourn. Any one of those men who are at the funeral, from the men that are at the funeral, the only ones who say the Kaddish are the sons. The Kaddish for a son is partly acknowledging what's called the situation. The same way this is said that God had given, the Lord had given, the Lord had taken. May the name of the Lord be blessed forever and ever. That is one part of Kaddish. And that when it's explained in the Talmud, when a person hears good news or bad news, you have to thank God. So there's always a time to thank God, whether it's good or bad. Unfortunately, at the time of bad news, you have to accept God's presence as well, because God is the one who gives life, and God is unfortunately the one who knows. Fortunately, He knows when to take life, not when we want it. It's never when we want it.
Now, Rob, what you could do now maybe to jump in where Rabbi almost left off, even though he's going to have more to share in a minute, why don't you do me a favor and do for us the song of commendation, the rite of commendation, because that would be from our own Catholic ritual. If you could share with us that hymn, and I think it'll be very helpful at this very point to share how we ritualize at Mass the final farewell.
And of course, following through from the other traditions, the purpose of this commendation is to remind us that this is another step in the continuum of life. And just as in the ancient tradition we say, bless the Lord, in a similar way. Come to her aid, O saints of God. Come angels now, her soul embrace, with arms of welcome, now lead her home, to see her God, now face to face. May God who made her now lead her home, with loving arms, take her by the hand, to join all those who have gone before, with Abraham in the promised land, with Abraham in the promised land.
Thank you, Rob. Abraham unites all of us around this table. Imam, could you share perhaps something of the ritualization, the way that it is that the Islamic community memorializes, celebrates one's passing?
All right. Preparing for the final departure from this life should be prepared, at an early stage, even when someone is well-being, by maybe writing a will and thinking of the other life and having a balanced spiritual life. But we have 4 mandatory rituals that they should take place. One is washing, a special washing called ghusl after passing of a person. And then it comes the shrouding the body. No clothing should be used. It's just a 3 simple piece of garments to wrap the body. It's called a shroud. And then a special prayer. Usually it takes place at the community or maybe at the cemetery itself. And finally, the burial. These are 4 mandatory rituals that should take place. Of course, every single one of them has a lot of details, how and when should we carry on. So these are the rituals that usually takes place when a Muslim dies.
We have to take our break, as they say, at this very moment, but do come back because in 1 minute, Rabbi, Imam, and Rob will share further about the importance of our ritualizing of one's passing from this life to God. Welcome back to what is a program that I am enjoying very much because we've never discussed this topic yet around this table. Rabbi, could you pick up where Imam left off by perhaps sharing from the Jewish perspective? He talked about washing, shrouding, praying, and burying. What might be certain things that you wanted to share with us that are a picture of Judaism's approach to this passage ceremony?
Number one, is Judaism as a fundamental looks at a person's body not as their own. Therefore, we do not have permission to do what we want to do with our body. When a person passes on, therefore, we do forbid autopsies. And autopsies, and the only time we will allow it is for the purpose of a murder investigation. So for anybody who thinks autopsies is an easy deal in Judaism, it's absolutely not. It's a very serious business. The other thing we forbid flatly is cremation. Cremation is absolutely not allowed to be done. Actually, it is very, very written very hard words of anybody who wants to cremate. Cremation has an effect on the soul suffers, and also you do not officiate at a cremation. You also do not say Kaddish. It's very serious issues of it is not to say Kaddish for a cremation. Wow. That's how serious it is.
So people do cremate, but it's considered...
I would sit and beg and cry.
Please don't.
And please don't.
Yeah.
And if you want me, I cannot officiate.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Now, once the body has passed, we try to do what's called a washing within, which is called the most reasonable time, which means not always because of holiday time can you get to do the ritual cleansing. And not always in practical America do you get the body released right away. So you have to have a lot of what you call help from the above, that the doctor signs off on the death certificate, and therefore they can take the body to a funeral home. And if you're lucky, you have a funeral home that is operated by traditional Jews is one thing. If not, you got to do it like I do at Wingate here in town. And they make special arrangements for me downtown. So I got to call volunteers. And then we go down. Some of them are trained. It's called the Chevra Gadisha. I try to get us people who are knowledgeable, who've done it more than once, who are at least mature, and we go ahead. Now, not always can I get everybody, and sometimes I got to wing it with less than the amount of people of my crew, but we've done it. We clean the body, we wash the body, lukewarm water. We first of all, like this: everybody who goes into that room does not talk. We're not supposed to talk anything unless it's necessary, because you're dealing with a holy vessel now. Then we all wash our hands in preparation, because now we're dealing with a vessel of God. So it's just like you wash your hands before a prayer, you wash your hands before you take care of a body. We wash the body out, and then we pour water in consecutive order of about 24 quarts, something like that, of straight water. And then we put on the shrouds. The shrouds are it's not a suit and tie. We do not go to a specialty store and get a suit and tie. The shrouds is made of plain linen, cheap clothes. You don't need anything special up there. And they have no pockets, no credit cards, no cash, nothing. And it's a pair of pants. It's a shirt. Wow. It's a top, like a tunic. We have, we cover the face. We put on a talus, if it's a man, if he had a talus. And we put what you call a wraparound, and then we put him in a coffin.
Imam, I'd love you to just almost be able to respond. It seems like I'm hearing a lot of similarity, but maybe there were certain things that Islam doesn't have a problem with or whatever. Let me just ask two things. Autopsies, where is Islam with that?
Not allowed in our faith unless it is required for the justice purposes.
Just like evidently with Orthodoxy.
Yes.
What about cremations?
No cremation, absolutely no cremation. We are made from earth and we have to go back to earth. This is respecting the body of the deceased and respecting earth too. And respecting the creation of God. So absolutely no cremation.
And then this idea of the washing, the shrouding, it seems like Islam and Judaism on this It's very similar.
We are very similar. It's amazing how similar we are. Yes, we are supposed to be buried as we were born. A shroud is to cover the body, as a way of respect. Otherwise, we're not going to take our watches and our faith and a tradition or credit cards or money or something. This is how we are going to meet God as we were born, only with our good deeds that will hopefully stay with us to help us on the hereafter.
Rob, I'd like you to weigh in at this point. First, maybe verbalizing, and then maybe singing Psalm 27. Where do you see, with what the rabbi and the imam have shared, certain points that you would say from leading prayer and music at liturgies of funerals? What parts do we resonate with and also in our own way stress in our own liturgy?
Sure. I think it's been clear that each of us celebrates the continuity of life. Life coming from God, generating on this planet, this earthly experience, and then continuing on. What's interesting is, not only is there a sense of continuity in the present life, but there's a continuity with all that has come before us. Yeah. And that's why in Catholic liturgy, going back to the writings of the ancients, going back to the Proverbs, to the psalmists, is so important. Our roots are so deeply implanted in the Hebraic tradition, and a good deal of the readings we have at a Catholic service are from the Old Testament. And psalmody is so important because it reminds us that these words are not just intellectual concepts. They are artistic expressions that come from the soul. And one of my favorite psalms is Psalm 27, which talks about God being our salvation.
The Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom should I be afraid? Of whom should I be afraid? The Lord is my light and my help. Whom should I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Before whom should I shrink? The Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom should I be afraid? Of whom should I be afraid? There is one thing I ask of the Lord, for this I long, to dwell in the house of my God all the days of my life. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom should I be afraid? Of whom should I be afraid? I believe I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Hope in God and take heart. Hope in the Lord. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom should I be afraid? Of whom should I be afraid?
Thank you, Rob. Rabbi, I wonder if in the last minutes we have, maybe everyone gets at least one more minute. A final thought that you really did want to share with us, something to affirm what's been said, or briefly in 30 seconds, one last thought.
one of the most fundamental things that we have here to acknowledge is that we have a part of God in us, and that part of God has to go back to its maker, complete. And the more we follow what God told us to do, He knows what's best, not what we know. We do not know what's best. We're limited human beings, and we are, shall I say, perverted by the physical world. God in His Torah, He put everything in there. We have to follow the Torah, not what you call New Age traditions.
Thank you, Rabbi. Imam, from an Islamic perspective, final thoughts?
Well, Jim, death is not a pleasant thing for especially the family who lose a loved one. So the best strategy when it comes to facing death is submission to the will of God. What other thing we can do except that we submit to what God has planned for everyone, and we for sure living with God in final home is much better than living in this limited world. Another thing that I would like to share, especially even with some Muslims, keep it simple. You know, death is part of our life, and just keep it. No need to spend a lot for fancy things.
Unfortunately, Rob, you're going to have to talk next week. We are concluding this program thanking Rabbi Zirkind, Iman Seyed Ali Ghazvini, and Rob Grant for their sharing on this topic. Join us next week when we'll be talking about the principle of shalom, salam, and peace from 3 different world religions. Till next week, God bless.